issues in recent years, with Vice President Harris playing more of an ancillary role, particularly on some of these immigration and other international issues. And here we can see President Biden coming up to the podium right now. Let's listen in.
Josh, thank you. And he is, of course, surrounded by family members, you can see, of those now freed.
You got everybody? Well, good afternoon. And this is a very good afternoon. A very good afternoon. Today we're bringing home Paul, Evan, Alsu, Vladimir. 3 American citizens and 1 American green card holder. All 4 have been imprisoned unjustly in Russia. Paul for nearly 6 years. Vladimir since 2022. Evan since March of 2023. And Alsu since October of 2023. Russian authorities arrested them, convicted them in show trials, and sentenced them to long prison terms with absolutely no legitimate reason whatsoever, none. Paul, a former Marine, was in Russia for a wedding. Evan, a journalist with a Russian in Russia, was in Russia, signed by the Wall Street Journal. Alsu, also a journalist, was in Russia to see family. All 3 falsely accused of being spies. And Vladimir was a Russian citizen by birth and holds an American green card. He's a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and was a pallbearer at my friend John McCain's funeral with me. He spoke out against Putin's regime, and for that he was convicted of treason. And now their brutal ordeal is over, and they're free. Moments ago, the families and I were able to speak to them on the telephone from the Oval Office. They're out of Russia. Earlier today, they were flown to Turkey, and soon they'll be wheels up on their way home to see their families. This is an incredible relief for all the family members gathered here. It's a relief to the friends and colleagues all across the country who've been praying for this day for a long time. The deal that made this possible was a feat of diplomacy and friendship. Friendship. Multiple countries helped get this done. They joined the difficult, complex negotiations at my request. And I personally thank them all again. And I've thanked them personally, and I'll thank them again. All told, Russia has released 16 prisoners. 8 Russians who are being held in the West will be sent home as well. These 16 prisoners from Russia that Russia has released include 4 Americans, 5 Germans, 7 Russian citizens who are political prisoners in their own country. One of those Russians runs a human rights organization, Memorial, which won a Nobel Prize in 2022. Putin threw him in prison for voicing opposition to the war in Ukraine. 4 others work with Alexei Navalny, a political opposition leader who died in Russia prison this year. Now they can live safely abroad and continue their work of advocating for democracy if they so choose. This deal would not have been made possible without our allies. Germany, Poland, Slovenia, Norway, and Turkey, they all stepped up, and they stood with us. They stood with us. And they made bold and brave decisions, released prisoners being held in their countries who are justifiably being held, and provided logistical support to get the Americans home. So for anyone who questions whether allies matter, they do. They matter. And today is a powerful example of why it's vital to have friends in this world. Friends you can trust, work with, and depend upon, especially on matters of great consequence and sensitivity like this. Our alliances make our people safer, and we began to see that again today. Let me say this. It says a lot about the United States that we work relentlessly to free Americans who are unjustly held around the world. It also says a lot about us that this deal includes the release of Russian political prisoners. They stood up for democracy and human rights. Their own leaders threw them in prison. The United States helped secure their release as well. That's who we are in the United States. We stand for freedom, for liberty, for justice, not only for our own people, but for others as well. And that's why all Americans can take pride in what we've achieved today. I want to thank everyone in my administration who helped make this happen. Our work did not start just on day one. It started before day one. During the transition, I instructed our national security team to to dig into all the cases of hostages being wrongfully detained, which were inherently, well, we inherit them from the prior administration. I wanted to make sure we hit the ground running, and we did. As of today, my administration has brought home over 70 Americans who were wrongfully detained and held hostage abroad, many since before I took office. Additionally, I issued an executive order in 2022 authorizing penalties like sanctions and travel bans on those who hold Americans against their will. And my State Department has introduced new warnings for Americans about the risk of being wrongfully detained by a foreign government. Deals like this one come with tough calls, and there are never any guarantees. But there's nothing that matters more to me than protecting Americans at home and abroad. And so we'll continue to work for the release of all wrongfully detained Americans around the world. Let me end where I began, with Paul, Evan, and also Vladimir and their families. They never gave up hope. We can't imagine what they've been through, all of you. Matter of fact, this lady right here, I think, was living in the Oval Office with us for a while. All kidding aside, can't imagine their joy right now. They're home. Tomorrow's a big day. The 13th birthday of Miriam. Miriam, where are you? Come here. You all know we have a tradition in the Biden family. We sing happy birthday on any birthday. You ready? All of you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Miriam. Happy birthday to you. Remember, no serious guys till you're 30. God love you. She's Alsu's daughter. Now she gets to celebrate with her mom. That's what this is all about. Families able to be together again, like they should have been all along. So I want to thank you again to everyone who did their part. In just a few hours, we'll welcome home our fellow Americans. We're looking forward to that. God willing, we're going to be out at Andrews and get that done. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And this is a good day.
What did you say to them on the phone, sir? What did you say when they answered the phone on the other side?
I said, welcome almost home.
How do you keep countries, these so-called abductor states, from simply taking more Americans in order to get more of their prisoners home? How do you end these perverse incentives, sir?
Well, we're advising people not to go certain places. Tell them what's at risk, what's at stake.
Mr. President, there are many events about these negotiations, and can you speak to the complexity of working with 6 countries to secure these releases?
Well, look, I'm not going to take the time now, but I'll do this later in the week. I particularly own a great sense of gratitude to the Chancellor. The demands they're making of me required me to get some significant concessions from Germany, which they originally concluded they could not do because of the person in question. But everybody stepped up. Poland stepped up, Slovenia stepped up, Turkey stepped up. And it matters to have relationships. It really does. These things matter. Pardon me?
Could this improve relations with Russia? Is there any avenue for that after this prisoner exchange deal?
As my sister might say, your lips to God's ears, man.
Did you ever speak directly with Vladimir Putin about this, or would you be willing to speak with Putin now directly?
I don't need to speak with Putin. Anyway.
How did you weigh that decision of letting somebody out who sounds like that way we heard tonight?
I got home innocent people. Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Are you speaking with Erdogan or any of the leaders about this?
Say that again?
Are you speaking with President Erdogan or other leaders about this?
Yes, I've spoken to all the leaders about this.
What did you say about
And by the way, as a father, look, you heard me say this before. I mean it. My dad had a simple proposition. Family is the beginning, the middle, and the end. Blood of my blood, bone of my bone. I can think of nothing more consequential. I mean it sincerely. And having lost family, not a different way, and not knowing what's happening, circumstance with their accident, with health. It matters.
Mr. President, what did Germany ask for in response for their cooperation?
Nothing.
President Biden.
What did Chancellor Scholz say?
President Trump has said repeatedly that he could have gotten the hostages out without giving anything in exchange. What do you say to that? What do you say to President Trump now, former president?
Why didn't he do it as president?
Sir, what did Chancellor Scholz say?
You heard those remarks there from President Biden, surrounded by family members of the 4 Americans now released from Russian custody, set to be on their way home shortly. You heard the president saying that they are set to be wheels up soon. And his message on the phone when he spoke with them, along with their families, was welcome almost home. The president describing, as he put it, a feat of diplomacy and friendship, saying their brutal ordeal is over. I want to bring in our NBC News chief international correspondent, Keir Simmons. And Keir, there was a lot there. Headlines, of course, from President Biden. And those emotional moments as he was surrounded there in the state dining room by family members of those now free.
That's right. And this is a moment where families will be breathing out, where colleagues of Evan Gershkovich will be breathing out. Brutal, the president described it as. And Evan Gershkovich was held at the Lefortovo prison in Moscow. That is the FSB prison. The stories from inside of there are chilling. And so I think we will hear about just how challenging it has been. We have seen Evan Gershkovich in courtrooms in Russia, in a Moscow courtroom, in a courtroom in Ekaterinburg, and he looked as if he was holding out. But it is really difficult to put into words the kind of experience that he just went through and that the others just went through. Just on that, though, Ali, too, that was one of the moments when we got an inkling that maybe something was happening, because just before the Olympics began, Evan Gershkovich was suddenly brought into court and was convicted and sentenced. And that seemed to be a sign, because the Russians, and frankly, what we're talking about here is President Putin, by what we've seen in the past, want to see the legal process finished before they agree to a swap like this. Another thing that might be worth just noting at this stage, this has been a long process, and it does look as if that this exchange was supposed to include Alexei Navalny, and that in the end it didn't, because he died. And as I had mentioned, when I questioned President Putin about that back in March, about Evan Gershkovich and asking when he was going to be released, he made news and said that, and you have to take everything that Putin says with a pinch of salt, but he claimed that he had agreed for Navalny to be released, and that then he had died in that prison. I mean, there's so much you could say about that, but it does, I think, indicate again, and it's not surprising, is it, given the complexity of all this, that this has been an extremely challenging, difficult diplomatic operation to get to this stage. And we're getting multiple statements from governments, including the German government, frankly, in diplomatic language, indicating just how challenging it was to make a decision like this. So there are going to be lots of questions looking ahead, but for now, celebrations for those families you saw there with the president.
Incredible celebrations. You mentioned, of course, the role of all of these leaders here. President Biden mentioned that he did speak with the other leaders involved, Germany, Slovenia, Norway, Poland, Turkey, etc. But when asked if he was going to speak with Vladimir Putin or if that was on the agenda anytime soon, he said, I don't need to speak with Putin, which is an indication, Keir, of what you and I have been talking about, that this, as the White House has been saying consistently since we received word of this prisoner swap, this should not be perceived as a thawing of the relationship between Moscow and Washington.
No, I don't think so. What I do think is that the Russians have been, if you like, perhaps this isn't quite the perfect way to put it, but effectively they have been collecting people in order to be able to have this moment. And why is that? Well, if you just take, for example, someone who has been released just in this prisoner exchange, Vadim Krasikov, and this is why the Germans are struggling with this, or have been struggling with this. Krasikov is somebody who was in a German prison for assassination. I mean, he was in prison for murder. He has now been released and sent back to Russia. He is somebody that President Putin has described as a patriot, and described what he did in Germany as liquidating a bandit. So what that tells you is that, I think, is that as ever with Russia, what President Putin wants matters hugely. And if what he told me in March at that news conference really is true, again, you never know, but if it is true that he agreed to the release of Alexei Navalny, then effectively at that point he had agreed that he wanted something like this to happen, and the wheels will have started turning. I think that might answer some of the questions about why this is happening now, because inevitably back there in the US it will have domestic political implications. We don't know fully what they will be, of course. Just keep in mind, and I think it's worth noting as we report this out through the day today, just continually, I think it's worth noting that Mark Fogel, Kesnia Karolina, both of them are not released right now, and their families will be desperately unhappy about that. Inevitably, Paul Whelan, his family was deeply unhappy when Brittany Griner was released and he wasn't. So these are bittersweet moments, but all the same, though, for the families and for Evan Gershkovich, who, of course, is a fellow journalist, it is a moment of exhilaration and terrific optimism to just see them, as we will now, to see them free.
And you saw his parents there at the White House with President Biden, along with so many of those other family members. Keir Simmons, thank you. Let's go to White House correspondent Ali Rafa, who's been following all of this. And Ali, there was also some references, of course, to the political overlay here. You heard President Biden talk about how this moment showed why allies matter and why relationships matter, which seemed to be a subtle nod to the isolationist policies that former President Trump had espoused while he was in office, and then to that very direct question from one of the reporters in the room. And President Biden did take a few questions there. He talked about why didn't former President Trump get these people out when he was in office, of course, referencing Paul Whelan, who was still detained while the former president's administration was in place.
Yeah, Hallie, you mentioned that question that he was asked, quote, President Trump has repeatedly said that he could have gotten the hostages out without giving anything in exchange. And President Biden replied, quote, why didn't he do it when he was president? And of course, drawing attention to the fact, as you mentioned, that 2 of the 3 Americans released today were imprisoned, wrongfully detained during the Trump presidency. And you heard the president talk about when these efforts began, saying that he directed his diplomatic team even before he took office, when he was president-elect, to start engaging in these diplomatic talks, to be able to have this news today, this successful prisoner swap start, all these diplomatic conversations, also praising the work of that team that's really fanned out across the globe to be able to get to this news we have today. And you heard him specifically mention all of the countries involved in this today, talking about Poland, Slovenia, Norway, Turkey, and specifically Germany, and the work of German Chancellor Scholz and what the concessions that Germany made in getting this deal across the finish line. He said all of them joined this effort, quote, at his request, and he has personally thanked the leaders of those countries. He said that all of them, quote, stepped up and stood with us. All of them made bold and brave decisions, and reiterating, saying anyone who questions whether allies matter, he says they do, especially in times of great consequence like this. And you've heard the president for years now talk about his decades-long relationships with some of these world leaders, tout his experience as a senator for more than 35 years dealing with foreign policy issues. And again, during this extremely momentous moment, this historic moment, talking about the importance of those alliances, of those friendships. You saw the president flanked by 11 family members of these 3 American citizens and 1 American green card holder, addressing the nation, and again, giving credit to those countries that are still involved in this process. Of course, he said that these wrongfully imprisoned Americans that are now leaving will be home on U.S. soil in just a few hours, when, of course, they're expected to start that incredibly difficult process of now reacclimating to life, not in prison, Hallie.
Ali Rafa, thank you very much. Our Pentagon correspondent, Courtney Cubie, is also with us. And Courtney, this was a massive feat of the national security apparatus for the United States. We understand that many of these negotiations were led in part by the CIA and intelligence officials working to get to this moment that the president is referring to. He suggested that, he mentioned Andrews, I think, which seems to suggest that this plane will land at Joint Base Andrews. The family members obviously here in Washington, so still more key moments to come throughout the course of the day and night.
Yeah, and I imagine, Hallie, there won't be a dry eye at that event at Andrews whenever that does occur, with the family members being here. But I was struck by a couple of things the president said. One was, you mentioned that what really was a U.S. government, an entire U.S. government effort to try to make these negotiations happen. But I was struck by President Biden referring to tough calls that had to be made and then thanking the chancellor. So what I took that to mean was he was talking about Vadim Krasikov. This is someone who has been held. He was an FSB agent. He was known as someone who was an executor. He would kill people. He was a criminal, and he's been held by the German government. He is someone who Vladimir Putin has wanted to get back on Russian soil for some time, but the German government has rejected that idea. President Biden directly thanking German Chancellor Olaf Scholz in his remarks today, because as we have now learned, he was really the linchpin. He was the final domino that fell that allowed this entire prisoner swap to move forward, was getting Vadim Krasikov out of a German prison and back onto Russian soil. That was why Vladimir Putin allowed for this larger swap to go forward. But I was also very surprised in the question and answer, the brief question and answer after the president's remarks. He was asked about U.S. and Russian relations. Now, a senior administration official told our colleagues, Hallie, that we should not read too much into what has occurred here, this historic swap today, as being an indicator that U.S. and Russian relations are going to suddenly be on a better footing. The official pointing out specifically Russia's continued war in Ukraine, the growing Russian relationship on a military and even an economic level with the Chinese government, with North Korea, with Iran, those nations providing, in some cases, lethal and in other cases, non-lethal assistance to Russia that has made its way to the battlefield in Ukraine, in some cases even really being a game changer on the ground in Ukraine for Russia. So the senior administration official saying, look, don't read too much into this deal as there's going to be a change. And we heard from President Biden when he was asked about that. He said, well, from your lips to God's ears. And he said he did not need to speak to Vladimir Putin going forward. So that seems to really reinforce what we heard from the senior administration official, that, again, despite the fact that there have been these years now of negotiations on this prisoner swap, it doesn't seem like it's going to indicate a change in the U.S.-Russia relationship, Hallie.
Courtney Kube, we're glad to have your expertise and your reporting with us here on this significant day in Washington and beyond. Thank you, and thanks to all of you for watching our special coverage here on NBC News Now. We'll have more on NBCnews.com.